You know, this is the third week of a sermon series called The Power of Words. And boy, if you hadn't felt your feet get stomped on, boy, wait till today. Anyway, every week as we look at the scriptures on this subject, in the beginning of time, it was established that words had the power of life and the power of death. And so in this sermon series, the challenge has been for you to pay a little bit more attention to the words that you speak. God hardwired this world. He hardwired this universe that when things are spoken, they can be things that are good or things that are bad. From the very beginning, He said things like, "Let there be light." He saw what He'd made and it was good. But then you also see in Genesis chapter 3, when I say that, there was the old devil that came up to Eve and he said, "Did God really say that? Did God really say that?" And so you see, words carry a lot more weight than we realize. One of the hardest lessons for us is to realize that when we speak words, we can't get them back. When we say something, those words just go right out, and they may be hurtful things. Most of you know that you probably at some point have said something and you think, "Boy, I wish I would have never said that. I don't know why I said that. I'm sorry that I said that." Maybe you have some regrets. Well, this says no regrets. You've seen, as you watch the television, you've seen some of the funny things that happen when some mistakes are made. This is a kind of a tattoo nightmare. No regrets. Maybe you've seen some more of these. I've kind of enjoyed some of these shows. I like this one's a little creative. Leave a comment below. Well, you know, I guess the guy could let his hair grow out and you wouldn't see that, but don't you think the number one reaction would be comment is spelled with two M's, right? Yeah, that'd probably be mine. I like this one. Happened a couple of years ago. I have some friends that are University of Kentucky fans, and the guy went out. They were 38-0 and they got into the Final Four. And so he put 40-0, national champions 2015. They lost the first game of the Final Four. They didn't make it, of course, if you remember. But you know, I don't know. Anyway, what I want you to understand is metaphor. You know, using it as a metaphor. Sometimes our words can stick on people. I mean, what if every word that you said to someone just showed up on them and began to, just be right there? Wouldn't you be a whole lot more careful with the words that you spoke? I tell you, I know I would. Words don't always just go away. Proverbs 12:18 says, "The words of the reckless pierce like swords, but the tongue of the wise bring healing." It's not that they meant to do it or they meant to hurt. They didn't realize it at the time. A group of Facebook friends were asked this question: has there ever been words that have really hurt you? Let me give you some of the responses. "No one will ever want to be with you. You're damaged goods. You're lazy. You're irresponsible. You're not smart enough. Why can't you be more like your sister? I wish you were never born. I never want to see you again. No one will ever love you. You will never amount to anything. You and your brother were in the way of me living my life. I'm just not attracted to you anymore. No one will ever want to marry you. You lost the game for us tonight. You lost the game for us tonight. I met someone else. It's your fault that your dad left me. I hate you." And on the list of words that have been spoken, that have basically been tattooed to a heart, can be there. And I know the person that spoke the words, they probably have forgotten all about it. They wouldn't remember that situation. Oh, and they have faded a little bit, but there's still a scar that's there. The Bible gives us a few categories of words that have power and leave a permanence and damage that they do. The first type of words is words of gossip and slander. Proverbs 16:28 says, a perverse person stirs up conflict, and gossip separates close friends. Now, when we define gossip, we would define it as talking about someone behind their back and saying something that's not true. But that's not the biblical understanding of gossip and slander. Gossip and slander from a biblical standpoint, from a biblical understanding, is talking about someone in a negative way when they're not there, when they're not around. You know, we try to justify gossip sometimes. We say, well, if it wouldn't matter, I would say it if he was right here. But the point is, he's not right there. And so that's what, that's what we're told not to do. Well, God hates it because what happens is it destroys community and it tears apart relationships. You know, we tend to be like the lady who was asked, do you have a problem with gossip? And she said, oh, no, I don't have a problem with gossip. But my neighbor, you tell her, she just tells everybody, blah, 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 blah. And she started talking about her neighbor. You know, we see it in someone else, but it's hard for us to see in ourselves. Now, the Bible communicates that gossip is a big deal to God. Here's a list in Romans chapter 1, and it's listing all the things that are bad. It says, they have become filled with every kind of wickedness, evil, greed, depravity, and they are full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, and malice. They are gossips and slanderers. So right there with, whatever murderers are listed, these two words. Right, another way that a gossiper, it's also kind of can be translated like a whisperer, a person that talks about other people where they can't hear. You know, what's interesting is in the scriptures, gossip isn't something that we just do with our mouth, it's something that we do with our ears. Like, listen to this one in Proverbs. It says, a wicked person listens to deceitful lips. A liar pays attention to a destructive tongue. It's not just what we say, it's what we listen to. God warns us about this, and He knows that it will destroy friendships. Some of you could probably tell a story of how a friend, you told them something, and they betrayed you, and they told it to other people. And it's really hard for you to recover from that. Oftentimes, there's never a full recovery. In fact, in your mind, you're just asking the question, I wonder if I can trust them with things. Well, the Bible warns gossip can destroy. It can destroy families. I don't know, maybe yours is a family where everybody gets together and on holidays or whatever, and you dare not miss, because if you miss, you'll get to hear later what was said about you. So you better go just so that you won't be talked about. Now, I don't know, gossip can divide families. Gossip can divide churches. It's a big deal in lots of churches. Preachers, when they come together to talk, often will say that gossip is a problem in their church. Gossip and whispering negative comments and slander can be a very big deal within the church. Proverbs chapter 10 verse 19 says, too much talk leads to sin. Be sensible, keep your mouth shut. This is out of the Living Translation. But have you ever wondered why people that want to gossip come to you? Why do they come to you? Why do people think, I want to hear the things that they're saying? Maybe it's because of the reception they get when they do. And no doubt all of us need to work on this area that's in our life. We want to project unity within the church. We want to project, and protect, I should say, we want to protect the church and the work of God. God's church is worth protecting. The Bible talks to us about our words. Things are said like, watch out, don't slip into this. Keep a rein on your tongue. It's going to be a struggle. It's going to be a challenge. Be aware of it. Don't get caught off guard. And that's true for us as a church when it comes to gossip and slander and whispering. The Bible says that we're going to be held accountable for every word, careless word that we speak. And I think it's especially true when it comes to the words that we speak about the church. Sometimes people, have said bad things or said, gossipy things about me. A lot of times I've heard about those things, and when that happens, I'll just say, Most of the time, it depends upon who it is. You know, it depends upon who is saying things. Sometimes it's amusing. Sometimes it bugs me. I'll have to admit, most of the time, sure, there's hurt and, you know, there's irritation and you're annoyed. But it really depends if it's from someone that I really love. And you know, when I say that. But if you really want to see me get mad, and as I started the service, I was talking about Kathy. You say something bad about Kathy, you know what? Me and you will probably have some problems. And I'm serious about that. Well, who do you think the church is? When you talk about people in the church is the bride of Christ. He died for each and every one of you. And He loves you. And He cares about the people that He died for. The church is His bride. So when we use our mouth to decide, you know, we're going to tear down His bride, do you think He feels good with us about that? And then you can actually flip the thought and say, well, when you stand up for His church, His bride, don't you think that He notices that? How do you disarm? How do you disarm gossip? Let me read to you someone's thoughts. I have a friend who's beautiful at disarming gossip. I've been with him on several different occasions in meetings, and sometimes gossip can be a word that comes up about someone that's not there. And this friend, he just naturally does this. Someone starts being critical, someone starts being negative, the person isn't at the table to talk, and somebody's talking bad about this guy. My friend just says 2 or 3 good things about him. He says it once, he says it twice. By the 3rd time he says it, they've gotten the message and the subject is changed. You know, he's not confrontational. He's just uplifting and encouraging and positive about those that are being spoken of. The Bible says, say what is useful for building one another up. I don't have that scripture up there. But the first category is words of gossip and slander. Another category is words that destroy. Philippians 2:14 says, do everything without grumbling and arguing. You know, yet most people could probably identify somebody in our lives that's just kind of what they do. No matter what happens, no matter what's going on, they're kind of grumbling and complaining about everything. Whatever happens, they can tell you the bad things that are going on. They can point out the things that don't go well. They come to a room and they'll just say, well, it's too hot or it's too cold. They'll tell you the weather is this way, the prices are too high, the music is too loud, the food is too spicy, the parking lot is too crowded, the server is too slow. And you just are thinking, why on everything are you giving complaining words? Studies have been done by the University of Denver trying to help understand about divorce and why divorce occurs and how it relates to the words that are spoken. Critical comments is one of the greatest predictors of divorce. Critical comments is one of the greatest predictors of divorce. When there are 10 or more negative comments per 100 comments, the divorce rate is higher. And also this is true in the workplace. This is a book called The Carrot Principle, a business book, 10-year study involving 200,000 employees of companies around the country. And the key finding was 79% of the employees who quit at a job, they cited the lack of encouragement, that they lived or they were in a culture of criticism. These were key reasons that they gave for leaving. Proverbs chapter 12, verse 18 says, the words of the reckless pierce like swords. I read this. But the tongue of the wise brings healing. Words can do more damage than we ever know. With our mouth, we can destroy, and with our mouth, we can heal. Words have the power of life and death. And as a preacher, lots of times I have the opportunity to see how words can be used to bring healing into lives. Some people that are here today are in church because the right word was said at the right time that really penetrated into their heart and their mind. Proverbs 15, the whole chapter talks about the right word at the right time. Proverbs 25:11, it says, a word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in pictures of silver. And what a great gift, to give to someone. And I think maybe the prayer to give a fitly word would go like, God, today I'd like you to help me say the right thing at the right time to the right person. I don't know who that is. I don't know when they'll come in. But there's going to be somebody in my life today that needs to hear the right word from you. Would you help me to know when that is? And would you help me to speak the right word at the right time so that this person's life could be impacted? We have incredible power to bring life into someone just by the words that we say and by saying the right words at the right time. Have you ever thought about school teachers? I know that there's a number of school teachers and coaches in this room. And saying the right word at the right time, it can be so much. It can mean so much. Words of blessing that can be tattooed onto the lives of your students. This was a story that I read. I was in the 3rd grade, and I remember quite vividly coming back from the eye doctor and walking into the class wearing these big, giant glasses that were ridiculous. They were like 2 steering wheels next to each other. I had huge buck teeth, and my ears stuck out, and I walked into class, and I wasn't prepared for the response. Kids were whispering, "Nerd alert, nerd alert." He said, I went and sat down. My teacher, my 3rd grade teacher, Miss Zisi, she called me to the front of the class. We all liked Miss Zisi. She was really pretty. She was right out of college. She was real young. She had a fiance football player that would come in the room and bring her flowers. And she said, as she brought me to the front, she said, "I see you have new glasses." And he writes, "I thought, why did you have to point it out?" And he said, at that moment, she said something that I'll never forget. She said, when I look at you, do you know who I see? I see Clark Kent. You look just like Clark Kent. And he said, she thought I was Superman. She thought I was Superman. And so, you understand a word that's correctly spoken can just mean so much. 3rd type of words is words that give life. God has given us words where we can speak life or we can speak death. We can do good or we can do bad. It's more than just having the right word at the right time, though. It's having the right word from God that really gives power. Ezekiel chapter 37 is an example of this. Any word has power, but a word from God, the word from the Lord, it has like supernatural power. And you see this over and over again in the Old Testament, where God raises up a prophet, and he speaks the right word at the right time, and it's usually God's word, and a nation is brought to repentance over the right word at the right time. That's really God's word. One of the images that you'll see in Ezekiel is he was a prophet that he loved God's word. One of the things, I don't know if you know this about Ezekiel, but to prove the point, one time he ate a scroll. He just ate the whole scroll. And he was saying to the people, you need to hunger after God's word. You need to hunger after his word. Well, Ezekiel had been taken captive in Babylonia, and God wants Ezekiel to understand that there's power in the words that he will say. So in Ezekiel chapter 37, I'm going to read this kind of fast. It says, "The hand of the Lord was on me, and he brought me out by the Spirit of the Lord, and he set me in the middle of a valley. It was full of bones." Now this is a dream that's going on. "And he led me back and forth among them, and I saw a great many bones on the floor of the valley of bones that were very dry." Can these bones live? Bones, dried bones, dead bones? These are not people, they're bones. Well, death is everywhere. Well, God goes on in verse 3, and it says, "He asked me, Son of man, can these bones live? And he's asking Ezekiel. And he says, I said, Sovereign Lord, you alone know that. You know, it's kind of like, what a good answer. Ezekiel, he's like, I don't know, Lord, you know. Then he said to me, prophesy to these bones and say to them, dry bones, hear the word of the Lord. This is what the sovereign Lord says to these bones. I will make breath enter you, and you will come to life. I will attach tendons to you and make flesh come upon you and cover you with skin. I will put breath in you, and you will come to life. Then you will know that I am the Lord. So I prophesied as I was commanded. And as I was prophesying, there was this noise, a rattling sound, and the bones came together, bone to bone. You know, it's like all of a sudden God makes all this stuff happen, and all the bones get in the right place, and they're coming together, bone to bone. And I looked, and tendons and flesh appeared on them, and skin covered them, but there was no breath in them. You know, Ezekiel says, God said, I want you to speak this message. And Ezekiel says, so that's what I did. And there's this rattling noise across the valley of all these bones coming together. They attach themselves as full skeletons. Muscles, flesh, skin is formed. And still they had no breath in them. And in verse 9 it says, then he said to me, prophesy to the breath. Prophesy, son of man, and say to it, this is what the sovereign Lord says. Come, breathe from the four winds and breathe into these slain that they may live. So I prophesied as he commanded me, and breath entered them. They came to life and stood up on their feet, a vast army. You know, Ezekiel listens to what God said, and Ezekiel speaks what God is saying, and Ezekiel watches to what God does with all these bones. But the question that God asked Ezekiel is the same question that I ask you. Can God bring life to these bones? You know, can God make these bones live again? Can God bring back to life your cold, hard heart? Can He do that? Can God bring back to life your withered up, dried soul? Can He do that? Can God bring your dead marriage back to life? Can He? Can He? You know, can God bring back peace after the storm that's just robbed you of everything and has taken more away from you than you knew you had to give? Can God do that? Can God do that? Can God bring back joy after the life-stealing grief that you've experienced? Can He still do that? Can God still give joy? And some of you that are in this world, in this life, you're exhausted. You're tired of being faithful to what God has called you to do in your heart. I don't know if it's at your work or whether it's at your home or whether it's as a father or a husband or as a wife, as a mother. And you're saying, boy, this is just too difficult. This is just too hard. I am just so tired. But that's not what God is saying. Look at His Word. It says, come to me, all you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. That's what His Word says. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest in your souls. If you're tired, come to Him. If you're tired, come to Him. Philippians 4:13 says, I can do all this through Him who gives me strength. You can do all things, not from your strength, but you can do all things through the strength that God has for you. Maybe there's some of you that it's hard for you to forgive yourself. Oh, my sin is too much. God would never want me. And we're saying things like that to ourselves. But you know, I've shared with you Romans 8:1 says, there's now no condemnation to those that love the Lord. Romans 8:28 says, all things will work together for good to those that love the Lord. 2 Corinthians 12 says, this is Paul, and he's saying, 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me. And he's talking about this problem in his life, this thorn in his flesh. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. He's saying, my grace is enough. He'll give you what you need. And you need to start saying what God has said. And maybe you feel scared and alone, and you said, no one cares. Everybody's let me down. But that's not fair, because that's not what God is saying to you. 2 Timothy 1:7, he says, for the Spirit God gave us does not make us timid, but it gives us power and love and self-discipline. You know, that the Spirit that He has for you is not the spirit of, I can't do it, or your timidity. The Spirit that He gives is of power and of faith and of self-discipline. Hebrews chapter 13 verse 5 says, keep your lives free from the love of money and be content with what you have, because God has said, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. You know, you feel hopeless, and you've said to yourself, you know, there's no coming back from this. This addiction was just too much. This relationship is just too broken. This diagnosis they've given, my hope is all gone. But you need to listen to what God has said. Here's another one in Corinthians 2. He says, however, as it is written, what no eye has seen, what no ear has heard, and what no human mind has conceived, these things God has prepared for those who love Him. You know what God is going to do for us in the world that's to come? There's nobody who their eye haven't seen, their ears never heard, or their mind can conceive all that God is preparing for us. The vision that Ezekiel is having about these bones in Ezekiel 37, it's a story about the nation of Israel, and it's a story about how God is, and it's a story about God's character. But it's a story about what God would like to do. He would like to rise up the dead bones. He would like to make a difference in people's hearts and lives. Through Jesus, God can speak where there is death. His word can override all the death in this world, and His word can bring life. The question, can these bones live again? Can they? I don't know what you're going to tell yourself. I don't know what you say the answer might be. Yeah, they can. Well, it's all because of the power that we find in Jesus. Be careful with your words. Speak life with your words. Would y'all stand with me? Father in heaven, there's not one of us in this room that hasn't spoken words that we wished we wouldn't have said. Father, there's not one of us who is not guilty. Lord, help us to see and help us to understand and help us to live in a way that we use our words. Lord, I pray for teachers, and Lord, I ask you to help them to say the right word at the right time to the right one that needs that word. Lord, but I pray for each and every one of us that we might do that very thing. Lord, whoever you send in our path today, Lord, may you use us to speak life with our words. Lord, to not be gossipy or use slanderous things. Lord, help us not to have words that are tattooed on people that we should have never said. But Lord, help us to realize that your church is your bride, and we need to be very careful about the one that your Son died for. Thank you for your love for us. Thank you for the forgiveness that we can know because of your Son, Jesus. And it's in His name that I pray. Amen.